Tablespoon Kitchen. Today I'm going to be making some hot cocoa mix, and it is a wonderful thing to keep in your pantry. It lasts about 6 months, is shelf stable, and it's January, so I just kind of figured it's hopefully going to get chilly sometime in the year of our Lord 2025 during winter. Who knows? It's unseasonably warm. But I'm still holding out hope that we're going to get some snow where I live in Colorado eventually. And these hot cocos will be absolutely amazing when that happens. So I'm getting prepped. Like I said, this last 6 months, at some point it will get cold. So I can go ahead and pull out this hot cocoa mix and use it to make some wonderful hot cocoa for myself. I do plan to go through kind of all the ingredients little by little, give you information about why I use them, give you information on how to customize if you don't want to purchase and or don't have access to certain ingredients. I know it can kind of be hard, especially if you don't want to shop online, to find different specialty ingredients. And so I will help you guys work around that and give you kind of an understanding of what the base ingredients are, how they work, and then how you can change it to how you like it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need 4 ounces of unsweetened chocolate. Unsweetened chocolate. So I actually have a couple of different brands here. I want to talk a little bit about chocolate real quick. I'm probably going to end up, I've never used the Guittard. I will find this in the store. This is at most grocery stores. It's the Ghirardelli 100% cacao. They do have other levels. I think they have like a 72 and an 80 intense dark or something like that, and like a 60%. There's like a bunch of other ones. But I'm specifically going with the 100% because we do add sugar to this. And then we also do add, I'm adding blonde chocolate. Blonde chocolate is listed in the ingredients on this recipe, but also white chocolate would be kind of the substitute for that. And so you have a lot of sugar coming from other places. And if you want that really rich, bitter, deep chocolate flavor, you're going to want to use the 100%. And so I typically will use this. This is also an option that I've seen in stores. It's basically like some baker's chocolate. It says it's Baker's Premium. I don't know much about this brand and its background. I will typically use this in something like brownies or where I don't think, I don't know, brownies, maybe like a coating of something like that. I just prefer to have something that I know is a higher quality chocolate from the start. The thing about America, is that we tend to put a lot of different kinds of fats into our chocolate. In the US, there's kind of like different levels, I should say, different levels of chocolate just in general. This is true around the world, but mostly it's a thing in the US where you might have like, say, chocolate morsels or melting wafers or something like that. Which don't really need to have like the wafers don't really need to have like cocoa butter. It's usually got other stuff in it. And then you get into the morsels, which have like anti-caking agents and preservatives and things kind of coating the outside of them. They typically have some kind of like palm oil or like a wax or something like that in them to help them keep shape when you're putting them into cookies and other baked goods, which is not a bad thing. It's just not the best thing when you're trying to have something melt really well, have a really good texture and a really good flavor. You kind of lose out on texture and flavor when you're using something that has other stuff in it. And so like it might be great for cookies, it might be great for brownies. The morsels are like pancakes or something like that because they hold shape, but they're not going to be great when it comes to melting and flavor. And so you kind of move into the more like premium chocolates, right? And so you go from like, say, morsels into like, you know, a regular chocolate bar. So something like this will be better than using morsels. So if you're not sure, if you want to spend the money on something that's a little bit closer to like a couverture chocolate, which I will explain in a minute, this will be better than a morsel. So it's kind of like a step up. So instead of using those, go for here. And then if you want to step up further from that, you can go to this guy. and then into the Guittard. And then there is something beyond that called Couverture chocolate, which is a company like Callebut, a company like Valhrona, and those look kind of like this. These are Couverture wafers. This is the company Valhrona. This is their Dulcey. This is a blonde chocolate, which is essentially like a toasted white chocolate. I'm so excited to explain what that is to you guys. So this is a toasted white chocolate. You'll notice it is not the color of white chocolate. It's kind of like a brown color, and that's because the milk solids in the white chocolate, right, get toasted and cooked until they turn they have like a caramelly flavor and they turn a caramelized color. And so so blonde chocolate is really yummy, and you can make this at home if you don't want to buy it. It can be really expensive. I think the last time I bought this, I spent $26 on like on a less than a pound bag. So it is very expensive. And you can make it at home. I will explain how to do that as we move forward, but just so that we keep going down this line of couverture chocolate. So the thing that you need to have when you're working with, or when you're looking for couverture chocolate and you want to make sure that you have kind of the real thing, it has to have 35% cacao. You'll see it here on the label. So 35% cocoa butter here. Okay, or sorry, 35% cacao, and then it needs to have at least 31% cocoa butter. So this is 35% cocoa butter. So this falls firmly within like couverture. The 35% cacao is like if you were doing a semi-sweet into bittersweet into whatever. So, you know, this one has 100% cacao. So this in theory would count, but it also needs to have at least 31% cocoa butter. And so that's kind of where it needs to fall into both of those things. So at least 35% cacao and at least 31% cocoa butter. And that's what gives you the really rich, kind of expensive chocolate. But it is going to give you the best results when it comes to things that really rely on that. So if you are making frosting, if you are making ganache, if you are making a chocolate sauce, if you are making hot cocoa, and you want to have that really rich flavor and rich texture, those chocolates are going to end up better than something like, say, this guy, or if you're doing like chocolate morsels or chocolate chips. So yes, this is technically, okay, so, and I know I said that, this is technically couverture because it's got the over 31% cocoa butter, but because it's white chocolate, it doesn't have cocoa powder in it. So technically, there's people, the people in the purists, I should say, would say white chocolate's not chocolate because it doesn't have cocoa powder. I don't really fall into that category as far as I'm concerned. It's chocolate. To me, it's chocolate. So let's go forward. I'm gonna use Guittard for the first time. I've not used them before. I want to know kind of what this is like. The end result's gonna taste like. I typically, like I said, use the Ghirardelli. But we need 4 ounces. This is a 6-ounce box that I found. That's got little 2-ounce bars in it. I'm gonna chop these guys up a little bit. I'm gonna need this too. If you notice, actually, let me bring this up as well. So there are other premium brands out there. Premium on the packaging. It's just gonna say they call themselves premium. And so you kind of just go with it. But Lindt, I think Ritter's probably, there's a bunch of different other chocolate brands out there that do 100% bars. Just make sure that you're looking at the bottom. So this specifically says premium baking. And anytime you see baking on a label, where's the other one? Here, Baker's premium baking bar. They're specifically going to have 4 ounces or 113.5 grams. That is how much these bars are going to be. It is a consistent measurement or net weight or whatever. That is kind of an across the board thing. When you get into bars and stuff that you just go into the candy aisle and you find a bar, you may find 100%, but it's probably going to be something like 3 point whatever ounces. And 100 grams, it'll say 100 gram bar instead of 113.5, and you're losing that. And so you'd have to pay, buy 2 bars in order to have the correct amount. So just make sure also, I really highly suggest that you check your net weight to make sure that when you do go to the store to buy these ingredients, if you are making it at a later date, that you are getting enough when you go to the store and you're not just buying like one bar. For those of you, I guess since I have said the magic words of at a later date, while I chop up this chocolate bar or these chocolate bars, let's have a quick discussion about what this is. If you've stumbled upon this, this is a live. I'm currently streaming live to a bunch of people on the internet, on YouTube and on Twitch, about making this hot cocoa mix. But you may have found this video on YouTube, in one of my playlists or on my website, and you stumbled into it and you're watching it, and welcome. Very nice to have you here. But I do these kind of cook-alongs once a month. Just a lot of fun. Pick a recipe on my website and go for it. So welcome. And there are plenty more of these where they came from. But I will be talking to the camera with a bunch of information. I will be looking at my chat here often. So if I'm like looking off to the side and then talking to the screen, it's because I actually have live people here asking me questions, and I will be answering them. So that's what's going on. I think I'm people. You are people. Here, let me move this a little out of the way. Ugh. I am left-handed and my elbow likes to go this way. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing is I'm just breaking this into smaller pieces. They don't really need to be this small, but I'm breaking this into smaller pieces so that when I put them into my food processor, they're not so big that they get like stuck and wedged in between the blades. And also they will freeze faster if they are small pieces. And we want that to happen. These bars, so the Ghirardelli bars are easier to chop. It's so pretty. Look, we like double wrap stuff. This is like fancy. The Ghirardelli bars are thinner, so they're easier to chop, and I can kind of just like chop like normal, but these I can't, so I'm kind of like having to get a little aggressive here with this chocolate bar. It's freaking me out. I actually took the top of my finger off almost completely once chopping chocolate. So chocolate, I get like really nervous chopping up chocolate. My thumb slipped, or my index finger slipped under the knife, and I did a thing. Okay, so we have our 4 ounces of 100% unsweetened chocolate. I know, right? Yep. And now I'm working with chocolate all the time. Okay, and now we're gonna do, where did my blonde chocolate go? We're gonna open this guy up. I'm gonna weigh it out. We need 1.3 ounces, about 37.5 grams of blonde chocolate. I will chop these as well. Oh, these have been in here a while. Let's see. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is blonde chocolate. This is white chocolate that was toasted, not caramelized. I think it's kind of funny. I think on the website, I wrote that it's caramelized, and it's actually not. It's toasted. If it were caramelized, it would melt. So, my bad. I'm going to go back, I think, and fix that on the recipe online. But in other places where I talk about toasting white chocolate, I think in the Scotchie's recipe, that gives a lot more information in that one. Okay. Now, you can make this if you really wanted to. It takes like 1 to 2 hours in the oven, depending on how interested you are in having the color be like super dark. Like you can kind of get it to like where it's just starting to change. And then you can get it all the way to something that's similar to this color. And essentially you take white chocolate bars, right? kind of lay them out on a silicone lined half sheet baking tray. And then you put it in an oven. I think I have, did I list out what the whole thing was? I don't have the steps in here. It's 225 degrees. I do not for the life of me remember what that is in Celsius. Sorry to my Celsius people. But it's 225 degrees. And you kind of like every 10 minutes or so, you go and you kind of scrape it and move the melting chocolate around until it starts to turn brown. But you have to be, it's like passive, but also active cooking because it's like you have to be aware enough to like remember something is in the oven and go checking on it, because there are lots of times I put something in the oven that's like a low and slow situation and I forget it exists. But with the white chocolate, you kind of have to keep up with it. And make sure that you go back every 10 minutes to give it a swirl, or it does start to burn. So you have to be kind of careful. But it's 107. Thank you to my people. So 225 degrees Fahrenheit or 170 degrees Celsius in your oven. Do not do forced fan. Just kind of leave it on a baking, like regular baking. We're not doing anything crazy. So no convection. And you can just kind of keep moving that around. Now, I will say this. That is not tempering. Like, it's not going to come out pretty. It's going to be dull. It's going to, not look amazing, but it will taste correct and it will melt correct. Because the point here, right, is that we're turning this into a hot cocoa mix. This is not to like dip anything or to make a whole new chocolate bar and like take white chocolate to the blonde chocolate and then pour it into something and have nice, shiny, crisp, like chocolate candies. We're not doing that. We're just making it into what it needs to be so that we can use it for a recipe. And so if there is instructions, I did the thing and I did put instructions for tempering blonde chocolate on the recipe, on this hot cocoa mix recipe. So if you really want to do it, you can, but it's unnecessary for this recipe. So you have like how to make it. And then also if you really need it, you have how to temper it, but you don't actually need it. So, I'm going to put this now in my freezer. And it's going to stay in there while we measure out the rest of our ingredients. The reason it's going in the freezer is because when anything goes into a food processor, a blender, whatever that looks like, there's agitation. And that agitation and that friction between the ingredients causes heat. So we need the chocolate to be as cold as possible, because when you start blending it, it's going to heat up and we don't want it to melt or get like weird and clumpy or any of that kind of stuff against the blades in our food processor. So we are freezing it. That is the purpose of that. Okay. It's not gonna come out pretty. I know. You guys are so funny. Okay, let's move on. I was checking chat. I feel like we're good. Okay, so now we're gonna start measuring out our other ingredients. Let me grab another bowl. I don't have any of my, I don't think I brought any of my mixing bowls or anything down here. We're just gonna use our soup bowls, because why not? Okay, so we need a half a cup or about 110 grams of refined granulated sugar. This is where we're gonna start talking about individual ingredients, and then I'll kind of try to tie back at the end on how everything works, because I tested a whole bunch of stuff. I ended up using the refined granulated sugar because I think that it made the chocolate, like it left the chocolate to be what it is, right? So I tested so many versions of this. I tested so many different ingredients. Light brown chocolate, or light chocolate, or what the heck chocolate? Light brown sugar, dark brown sugar. I used turbinado, I used an unrefined sugar, I used refined sugar, and then I even used, and this is what it looks like, I used toasted sugar. So toasted sugar, very much like our toasted white chocolate over here, is putting sugar in the oven and toasting it and getting it just to this caramel color before it melts. So you're keeping it at a point where it browns and you're getting that toasted situation, a little bit of that Maillard reaction without it caramelizing all the way, right? And this was really good, but it takes a really long time. It takes a long time, and it's just, to me, it was like kind of not worth it. Like if I could buy that ingredient, you can't really buy this. Like this is something you would have to make, and I don't know. I was like, I'm not gonna do this. Another option, if you really wanted to, is you probably could caramelize. I don't know, for anybody that's seen the movie Chef, that he does like a thing in one of the scenes where he kind of caramelizes sugar until it's like a nice like amber brown color, and then pours it out, cracks it after, because it's hit hard crack stage, right? Cracks it up, puts it in a blender, and then that gets used. In theory, that's kind of the same thing. He just caramelized it and then let it kind of harden and come back to the solid state, and then went backwards with that one. You may get a little bit of a burnt sugar taste depending on how far you let that go, but I guess if you wanted to do it really quick, you could do it that way as well. Up to you. I'm just gonna say all the things and hopefully everybody follows me with this. Okay, so, oh, I did 100, I need 110, might be. Okay, so it's, yeah, as I said, we need 110 or half a cup of our refined granulated sugar. I ended up with this. I think the toasted sugar was really good, but I really wanted the chocolate to shine in the hot cocoa mix. And so that's where I went. That's kind of where I went with the refined sugar. And I will say too is there's a bit of a balance, right? So like I've added a little bit of that caramel flavor by using the Dulcey, Valhrona Dulcey by using the blonde chocolate. If you do not want to purchase this, you could just use white chocolate, but you do need some form of a bittersweet or a 100% cocoa chocolate, and you also need a white chocolate. So one is giving you that chocolate flavor, and then the other one is giving you a creaminess, and it's giving you a texture that you would otherwise not have if you did not use the white chocolate. So those two ingredients are important. And then how you determine what level of unsweetened you want, or like, you know, what level of like caramelization and kind of something that's gonna like mellow down the chocolate flavor is really up to you. You could go full, like everything is clean, everything is exactly the ingredient it's meant to be. I'm using exactly white chocolate, I'm using refined sugar, I'm using 100% a chocolate bar, 100% unsweetened chocolate bar, and it can just be like a super pure form. Or you can start adding mellowing ingredients like a toasted sugar or a brown sugar or a caramelized a toasted white chocolate. You can do any of those things to kind of like mellow it down and give it a kind of a warmer flavor and a less really bright chocolate flavor. Another thing that I did, and I guess I'm going to skip over the salt and we'll talk about Dutch cocoa right now, is I used Dutch cocoa. There are 3 different kinds of cocoa powder that you can get at the store. You can get a natural cocoa powder, you can get a Dutch processed cocoa powder, and you can also do a black cocoa powder. Now, I chose the middle ground there. Black cocoa powder, it's basically, it's like a continuing process that changes the pH balance. So natural cocoa is more acidic, and it almost tastes, it's brighter and it's floral and a little bit fruity in a way that the Dutch is not. Dutch process is a higher pH, it's got a higher pH and it's more earthy. It tastes like a deeper chocolate flavor. And again, like I said, I wanted the chocolate to be really pronounced in this one. And only very slightly mellowed. And so I went with a Dutch process because the natural cocoa was too acidic and I didn't feel like it gave a really deep chocolate flavor. I did not do the black cocoa powder. The black cocoa powder has an even higher pH level and it is very, very bitter. And so that's something that I would only suggest using if you feel like playing around with it. And this is fully up to you if you want to like riff on the instructions and the ingredients. If you want to switch out some of your chocolate, so instead of doing 100% unsweetened, if you did an 80% or something between like 60 and 72%, and with kind of like a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate, and then did the black cocoa powder, that may give you a balance. It will be a different flavor, but it may give you a better balance than doing like 100% unsweet and then something that's very, very like earthy, unsweet bitter. We don't want to like amp up the bitterness. We want to kind of balance them. So if you decide to go that way and it's just something you already have in your pantry or whatever, then I do highly recommend kind of messing around with the sweetness in your chocolate if you're going to go super, super like bitter in the cocoa powder. Anyway, we need about a half a cup of the Dutch process unsweetened cocoa powder, which is about 50 grams. So let's zero this guy out. And I don't know how much I have left in this. I may need to open up the second bag. There's honestly like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, I'm showing you how to do a recipe, but also like this is one of those things where you really, it's probably better if I had just written it as like a ratio and then just let people play around with it, which is kind of the intention of what I was going for, but yeah, hopefully this is helpful. Okay, half a teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt, which is about 1.4 grams. I'm literally just gonna use my hands because whatever. I specifically use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. I think it has a less compressed flake, so it breaks apart easier, it melts easier, and it is not as salty as other salts are. I think probably the other one that's used most often is probably a Morton kosher salt. Morton kosher salt is 30% saltier than Diamond Crystal kosher salt by volume. So if I were gonna do like a half a teaspoon, like I just did now, a half a teaspoon of Morton kosher salt is 30% saltier than a half a teaspoon of Diamond Crystal kosher salt. If you use a kitchen scale, okay, and that's why I try to provide grams in as many ingredients as possible. If you use a kitchen scale, you can weigh them exactly the same and you will end up with the exact same amount of salt taste-wise. But if you go by volume and you're using these guys, you will need to use less salt for if you're using Morton than you do if you're using the Diamond Crystal kosher salt. So I highly recommend using a kitchen scale and just going by it that way if you're changing up the salt. And I specifically list the Diamond Crystal to make sure people know what ingredient I'm using because salts in fact do taste different depending on their crystalline structure. So also that. Let's see. Now I need a tablespoon of cornstarch, which is about 9 grams of cornstarch. I thought I was going to use these today. I think I'm just going to use a spoon. I think I'm just going to do this. Oops. That was about 1. I had 1.5. I forgot to zero out. 1.5, that's about 2. Okay, so I need 7. So the cornstarch is going to work in 2 different ways. One, it's kind of going to be an anti-caking agent, right? So I'm sitting there talking about how don't use chocolate morsels because they have anti-caking agents. And here I am putting cornstarch into this. It's going to do 2 things. It's going to work as an anti-caking agent to help your ingredients from sticking to each other if in fact it's warm in your pantry or over time or any of that kind of stuff if moisture builds up. So it'll protect it from that. But then also as you boil your mix with some milk or whatever milk alternative you were using at home, it will help thicken the mixture up and give it a really good texture. So it kind of works dually and does like 2 completely different things in your hot cocoa. Now I'm going to add espresso powder. You do not need to add espresso powder. I think it just makes chocolate taste chocolatier, I don't know, more heavy chocolate. I don't know what word I was trying to use there. And I like it better with the espresso powder in it. Absolutely not necessary. It's a half a teaspoon of espresso powder, which is about 0.75 grams. Please pick up. There you go. Okay. And then I almost felt like I wasn't going to do this today, but I might as well. I rarely use vanilla powder. The last thing I'm going to put in here is vanilla powder. And this is kind of one of those things where like, I just couldn't be bothered to take out vanilla every time I make hot cocoa. I like vanilla in my hot cocoa. But if I use an extract, I'd have to like add it every time. And I was like, I'm just going to buy some vanilla powder and put that directly into the mix so that I don't have to worry about remembering to add vanilla extract or like taking it out and kind of going with it. And so that's where the powder came from, is just because I like to have vanilla in my hot cocoa. and I didn't want to have to add it every time I made it. So it went into the mix. That's where we're going. Yes, it is Grandma Slayer. I will talk about toasted milk powder. Yes, they make, this one is specifically Watkins vanilla powder. I want to say I got this at Trader Joe's. But I'm pretty sure that I've seen this. I feel like I've seen this other places too. And Watkins is a really is a big brand for like extracts and spices and stuff like that. So you probably see it elsewhere. Okay, zero that out. It's only a 1/4 teaspoon. Oh, I guess I am going to do this. I really don't. It would be too hard to. Oh, it'd be too hard to weigh it out. So I'm only using a 1/4 teaspoon. The cool thing about vanilla, you don't need a lot of vanilla. Vanilla goes a long way. Okay. Toss that guy in. Okay, and that's our vanilla powder. If you wanted to, I think I have a note about the vanilla powder in here. Let me see. I do not. Honestly, you can really measure vanilla with your heart because it's kind of one of those things that it's like, it's powerful, but it never overpowers anything because it's such a subtle flavor. So like, if you wanted to, you could put just put a couple drops of vanilla extract into your hot cocoa when you're making it. If you don't want to go and buy the powder and you have extract at home, totally something you can do. You can leave it out. You don't need, it's like this totally an optional ingredient. You can leave it out if you also really want to. But I do want to make sure that you don't need to add you don't need a lot of vanilla, just like a couple drops, and you'll be good to go. If you're adding it at the time that you're making your cup of hot cocoa. And honestly, that is it. So we're going to dump these in. I like that I added all of this to a bowl and then proceeded to dump it into a secondary container instead of just using that container in the first place. Goat me. I'm just gonna make sure that I get everything out of this bowl because some of it's stuck a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a quick blitz just to make sure the ingredients are mixed. And then I'm going to add in our chocolate bars, our chopped up chocolate bars. Might be a little loud. I guess we've got a compressor on the mic, so hopefully it won't be too bad. But this won't be loud yet. The chocolate bars will be loud because they're frozen. Okay, so we're just gonna give that a couple of blitzes, knock stuff down a little bit, and then I'm gonna grab my chocolate, which has been in here for a good amount of time and is nice and cold. Okay. Okay, it's gonna be a little loud. This doesn't take very long though. Okay. And you will hear, so it'll be really, really loud to start and really high pitched. And then the pitch will get lower and lower and lower until it just sounds like powder is moving around. And that's essentially when you're done. Like I'm just gonna open this up, take a quick look. You don't want any large pieces left. So let's just check the texture here. We'll move this under the camera. Yeah, so this is pretty good. I might give this just another couple of seconds. But you can see it's broken up into really small pieces. And essentially, technically I could mix it with just what it was chopped, but it takes so long to melt into the milk right? And so that's kind of what you're trying to do, is you're trying to make it something that will start immediately melting into your milk or your milk alternative when you're making your cup of hot cocoa. And so the smaller the pieces, the better it is, right? And so that's kind of what we're going for. Say that without this running. That's what we're going for. Okay. So we are done, and that's it. That is it. I guess what I can do real quick is we can actually make a cup of hot cocoa. And get this out of the way. Does anybody want to make a cup of hot cocoa right now? We can do that. I'll make multiples today. Ugh. There we go. Okay. We're going to plug this guy in. So I have a cooktop over here, and I can face you guys while I work instead of being the other direction. There it goes. Okay. And while I make this, we can talk about a couple of other things, namely mix-ins and other ingredients. Okay. So I am, in fact, going to use some volumetric measuring, just because it is easier with liquid. Okay, so for a cup of hot cocoa, now that we have made this, and I'm sure this looks a bit of a mess, let's get some of this stuff out of the way. Just make a little bit more room. Almost ready. Uh-oh. Is the white balance being weird? Okay, we're gonna do a single cup. We keep whole milk in the house. That is our milk of choice. You can do essentially anything you want. The only thing for a milk alternative, there's like a couple of different things for you to kind of think about in your little brains, is this. If you are not using something as thick as whole milk is, okay, you're using something like a soy milk or just something like on the thinner side, a skim milk or a non-fat milk or whatever that looks like, you're gonna wanna add an extra half a teaspoon of cornstarch to your mix. Let's see, that's gonna be about 3 grams. So you're gonna want like an extra 3 grams or a half a teaspoon of cornstarch added into your mixture to help thicken, right? So I mentioned earlier that the cornstarch does 2 things. It helps as an anti-caking agent, but it also helps thicken your hot cocoa when you're actually making it. Cornstarch works once it's boiled, it thickens and then continues to thicken as it cools. It just gives it a really nice mouthfeel. And so you're kind of using that to replicate the extra fat that's in whole milk that you're not getting in your milk alternative. So just consider that. Just think about adding a little bit extra cornstarch into your mix to help with the thickening of your cup of hot cocoa. And then the second thing to think about, if you are using almond milk, please make sure that you are using an almond milk that doesn't have carrageenan in it. It tastes a little weird, and it can be it'll develop skin, and it just doesn't. That ingredient specifically messes with a cup of hot cocoa. So just look at the label, and if you don't see that in it, then you're good to go. Otherwise, all other alternative milks are good. So just FYI on that one. Okay, so let's turn this guy on, get him going. And it's gonna be 1 cup, 240 mils, 245 grams, depending on how you feel like weighing it. And 3 tablespoons of your hot cocoa mix, which is anywhere between 28 and 30 grams of hot cocoa mix. And essentially what I'm going to do, let me get, I know I have a whisk somewhere in here. Thought I brought it down. There we go. Let's talk about this real quick. So I've got a whisk. I am going to use a whisk kind of just to get things incorporated and get like the temperature kind of together. This is going to go pretty fast. But to actually finish off my hot cocoa, I'm going to use an immersion blender. So I'm going to use this hand blender to really get it. And the reason, right, is to really kind of, it's not going to actually homogenize, but it like really breaks everything up, gets all of the fat and all of the sugar and liquid and water and whatever all really incorporated and what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my goodness, it starts with an I. I'm having a day, friends. Emulsified. It starts with an E. So we're really going to emulsify all of those ingredients together by making sure that we're kind of blending it. You could put it in a blender, but I feel like that's kind of overkill. A whisk really will work, but what happens is because the ingredients aren't really incorporated to the almost nth degree, it develops a skin. So like everybody knows, like you make a cup of hot cocoa, you pour the little packet in, and you make your hot cocoa, and then like it starts to develop a skin kind of on top. You can help that in two different ways. The first way is to keep the temperature between 145 and 160 degrees while you're making this, which is the equivalent of, I've got it somewhere around here, 63 to 74 degrees Celsius. So you kind of keep it in that range, and that's going to help stop the milk from scalding and creating that layer on top. So you kind of keep it in between there. You don't want it to boil, right? You want to keep it under that. And then you are going to give it like a hit with this immersion blender and really break all of those particles up so it takes longer for them to come together. So hopefully you've got a solid 15 to 20, 30 minutes or so before you develop any kind of skin that's like annoying. Cool. All right, and then I did in fact bring down, I have another one down here. I thought I had a temperature. I thought I did. I've got one, oh, there, it's in my mixing bowl. We got it. I'm just gonna check the temperature on this. So you want this to be about 100 degrees or 38 C when you add it, which I'm already above that. So we're gonna turn this way lower. Just so that the chocolate immediately starts melting. So cocoa powder, right? Cocoa powder, cornstarch, all that stuff, they're a little hygroscopic, which means that they don't want to melt into the liquid that you've got here, the milk. And so it actually is better if you wait until you have the heat to then have the chocolate start melting. Once the chocolate starts melting and the cocoa butter is like kind of incorporating, it pulls in all those hygroscopic things that don't want to mix with liquid. And you've got now fat in there that's going to kind of pull and incorporate it easier. And so that heat is really helpful. If you add this into a cold milk, it's just kind of sit on top. It's going to take a lot longer for it to incorporate. So this way it's just faster. It's just faster if you wait a little bit longer. Have the patience. You can do it. I believe in you. Okay. This is actually the temperature that I want it to be. I started chatting with you guys and I didn't put it in fast enough, but it's fine. So I'm at 150, so I'm within that degree range on Fahrenheit. I think I'll say it again, that it's between 145 and 165 Fahrenheit is what you're looking for, which is 63 to 74 degrees Celsius. I tend to measure this with my heart. So the texture of this, and I'll say this here, so the texture of this is in between when you're dumping like a packet, right? When you're dumping a packet into some milk from the store, and like a drinking chocolate, which is a much thicker situation. This is going to be a kind of middle ground to that. If you want it to be thinner, add less. If you want to have something closer to a drinking chocolate, add more. You can double this recipe. I typically do. I'll typically have like 2 jars of this in the pantry that we'll go through. And so I can kind of add whatever I'm feeling if I want it to be thicker. And then if I'm adding other ingredients, so like right now I only have a single cup of milk, but I might want to add, say, some other ingredients to spike it. So if I want to add, this is a peppermint schnapps for some peppermint hot cocoa. If you want to add in some Irish cream, which luckily is already pretty thick, so you're not messing with the texture there too much. But if you want to make sure that it's not overwhelming your hot cocoa mix, you want to add more mix to have the correct chocolatey flavor in there, so that it's not diluted by the Irish cream. You can add some whiskey, whatever you're looking to do, you can in fact do. Okay, so now this is at a good point for me to use my immersion blender. As you can see, I'm gonna point this out. So like this is as far as you're gonna get with a whisk. And this is typical, like of any homemade hot cocoa mix, is like you get little specks. They're like, everything is melted, everything is fine, but like visually you might get flecks, and you may get very small pieces of chocolate that just like didn't melt all the way through. And they tend to just stick to the bottom of your cup, right? So like you don't really notice it until you get to the bottom of your hot cocoa, but like I wanna avoid that. I don't like randomly being surprised by different textures and something that's supposed to be completely smooth. So we're gonna do this. And it is gonna froth it up, but that's okay. It will go away over time, I promise. Okay. Let me do this a little bit real quick, and I'll show you guys you can kind of see we have no more specks underneath the foam. There are no more specks. It's all been blended in. It's nice and smooth, and you're not gonna get a bunch of stuff in the bottom of your cup at the end either, which is really nice. The froth will go away the longer it sits. It's just because I just did it, but yeah. So you can see like there's nothing else in there, which is nice. So this is also, again, premium baking, 4 ounces. You don't need 4 ounces for this recipe, but that is white chocolate. So if you're not gonna sit and use a blonde chocolate, white chocolate is gonna go in its place, okay? I did test out, this is where somebody asked earlier if I was gonna bring up toasted milk powder. I am, because I'm me. So this is my jar, can, whatever, of toasted milk powder. So this is essentially whole milk powder, dried whole milk powder that gets toasted until it turns this lovely brown, and develops that brown butter flavor we all know and love so well. Essentially, this is what happens in this, right? So you take a white chocolate, the milk solids that are in this turn this color, and they toast, and then you get this. So I did test this. I tried just adding the toasted milk powder and adding white chocolate to see if they came to something that flavor-wise, taste-wise, was similar to this. And it didn't work the way that I wanted it to, which is why if you want to add a brown butter flavor in, and that's what you're going for, and you like want to have kind of like a warm, caramelized, like toffee kind of flavor in your hot cocoa, absolutely add this. Like absolutely go for it. You can use the white chocolate. You can add a tablespoon or so of this in if you want. I guess a tablespoon is about 8 grams of this. You're welcome to do that. I couldn't find a good balance because the toasted milk powder really, it really kind of masked a little bit of that like warm, bright chocolate flavor I was going for with the hot cocoa. And because of that, like I couldn't, and like it was kind of like if I added too much, it kind of tasted a little bit like milk, right? Like a stewed milk kind of a thing. And like it had like a cooked milk flavor, which I didn't really care for. And if I didn't add enough of it, I was like, well, what's the point? And then also it didn't give me that like really like heavy, bright chocolate flavor that I wanted. And so I kind of abandoned that and just ended up here. The flavor was much more subtle. And so I went with that. And that's kind of where I ended up with. It's like, hey, if you want to make blonde chocolate, you should just make it like from a chocolate bar and not try to mix ingredients and mix and match stuff. It doesn't turn out the same way. But if you do want to have this flavor in there in general, you can just add this in for funsies. But if you're trying to recreate, like if you're trying to recreate this, this does not work the way that toasting this bar will. So yeah, I hope that answered that question because I know somebody asked about it. So yeah, let's go ahead and drink some of this hot cocoa. Do I add, guys, should I spike it? Are we gonna do that right now? What do I even put this in? Oh, here, I've got to, honestly, I can get a mug. We'll get a mug from the prop closet. Let's see. Ooh. I'm gonna use this. We're gonna use a fancy little clear Irish coffee mug here. I'm gonna add some peach. I'm gonna add some peppermint schnapps to this. Okay. Yum. Okay. I'm gonna add it, but there's no space to add it. That's really good. Okay. We're gonna do, I'm gonna do half an ounce. Half a shot. Peppermint schnapps is strong. We're gonna be good to ourselves today. Measure with your heart. 2 shots of vodka. Ah, Sandra, how we love you. Okay. The chaotic energy of that woman on her cooking show was wild. Here we go. That is very nice. I'm very happy with that. We're going to set that aside. Okay. I think, does anybody have any last minute questions? Irish cream for you? Yeah. Irish cream is I really like adding Irish cream. That's typically what I'll do so like for the base, I'll do half milk and half Irish cream. And then add the hot cocoa mix in once I've got them up to temp. And that's kind of how we typically will spike it here in the house. My husband's threatening to come past the camera to grab this so that he can drink it. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining me here in the A Little Spoon kitchen. I know I went through a lot of different things today, a lot of different options, substitutes, optional items, all those things in order to customize this the way that you want it. If anybody has any questions, if you found this video and you don't want to go specifically off the recipe and you have questions about like balancing taste and making sure that if you change one thing somewhere that it will not mess up something on the other end, please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email on my website at alittlespoon.com in the contact. I think it's not contact me, it's who me. And there's like a section where you can actually send me an email. You can DM me on Instagram at _little_spoon. or you can just make a comment right here underneath this video. I really hope that you like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.